Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Stephanie Ockerman. We talked about riding the waves instead of controlling the sea and giving up a good job to go solo backpacking. I'm Ivanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Are you a Scrum or Agile enthusiast? Would you like to grow in your role? Or would you like to connect with peers around the world? Then the Online Scrum Master Summit is just for you. My name is Esther Schmid, and I'm the main host of this global summit. You can join us from the 17th to the 19th of June, all virtually. So join us because we have great keynotes, insightful talks, and hands-on workshops. So go to osms25.com and register for free. Looking forward to see you there.
Hello everyone, and hello with me I have Stephanie. I guess that's how I should pronounce your name, correct?
Yes, Stephanie Ockerman.
And I like to ask that on camera because with the remote work, I think it's important that indeed people feel a little bit how is it. And with me here, I wanted to say for me here that means Belgium in Ghent, and I want to show a little bit on where we go. We're going to Costa Rica, if I remember correctly, to Uvita. I'm not sure if it's Uvita Beach or somewhere in the neighborhood. Anyway, the goal was not to help stalkers, but it should be close where you are, right?
It is where I am in this moment. Yes.
In this moment, yeah, that's indeed the idea. It's the recording. It's the moment where you are during the recording. So
Kind of
yeah,
beautiful, right?
yes, I think so. I think so. And so for me, the time is it's on a Wednesday evening. I think about 20 minutes after 8 o'clock in the evening. What's the time on your side?
About 20 minutes after midday.
After midnight. So we see completely different time zones, and so yeah, that's again thanks to technology that we have that option to have this conversation over time zones and lots of miles and kilometers away. Um, for me, ending of the day, for you in the middle. So I know that after this you still have other work to do, and I will be going to my family. So again, different parts of our day.
Mhm.
Um, Stephanie, before we jump into the questions, what do you want people to know about you for the few people that don't know you yet?
Well, my name is Stephanie Ockerman, and I most people probably would know me if they do know me from my business, Agile Socks. I also co-authored a book, Mastering Professional Scrum, with Simon Reindl, and I write a lot. So, in addition to the book, I have a pretty active blog at agilesocks.com, and some of my writing and videos are also featured by scrum.org. So that's probably how some people know me. And my business, Agile Socks, yes, I do professional scrum training, but it's really broader than that. When I say like, what do I do? What does Agile Socks do? I help leaders learn to ride the waves instead of trying to control the ocean. That's my fun way of saying it. And from a more practical, what does that mean? What does that look like standpoint? I help teams, organizations, leaders learn to use more evidence-based approaches in order to unlock value and unleash the potential of the people who are delivering that value. And so really my unique way of doing that is I bring together three core competencies that I think of them as a Venn diagram. Like they have to work together, and there's at the intersections is kind of where the magic happens, to really help create alignment and to lead to sustainable results. And those three competency areas are what I call integrated leadership. So the leadership development piece, self-managing teams, and business agility. So kind of having those three areas of focus, but also overlap where we kind of see the magic happen in the places that they overlap.
I really like that. I really like that. I was, for a small moment, I was hoping you would tell us about how we should control the sea, because you talked about I'm focusing on
If,
riding the wave, but I was like, and then you said something else about controlling the sea and how do we do that, and I was hoping you would explain me that, but yeah,
Well, we can't. That's the point, is we often are
exactly.
running around trying to control the sea,
Hmm.
and the reality is we can't. And I use this ocean metaphor and this surfing, wave riding metaphor because to me, it really mirrors the waters we swim in every day, right? It mirrors the complexity, the almost constant change, the uncertainty, the unpredictability that we face in, I would say, all aspects of life, but definitely in businesses and organizations and product development. Even people who don't do product development, as you know, the way they would describe it, just running a business that enables services for people, an organization, a nonprofit, a government organization, right? Complexity, uncertainty, responding to change. Those are essential. And there's so many variables, right? In the ocean, if you think about it, that affect how a wave is going to form, what that wave is going to do when it gets to you, and how it's going to change as it keeps moving. And so in order to actually catch a wave and ride it, we have to really be tuned in and sensing and responding in the moment. We can learn how to surf theoretically. We can practice these skills from the shore, from the beach, from the shore. We can go out and practice aspects that we're learning, and it is rough to learn surfing. It's a great metaphor because nobody like goes out and surfs and is like, awesome, I got this.
Mm.
At least I've never experienced that. It takes time, and it takes, I would say, years really, and it's a journey, not just a destination, because the ocean is always changing, right? You're going to have and you can't predict it. Yes, we have apps that give us the surf report and the forecast, but again, until you get to the ocean, you get to the beach and you look for yourself, it could be very different from what the forecast is. And the forecast is highly scientific, right? Like it's tapped in, it's using sensors, it's using a lot of the scientific variables that affect how waves form, and it can still be wrong. And also, then by the time you start to paddle out, the ocean can change again. And also, you still don't really know just from using your eyes what you see from the shore. It's like you have to be in it, and you have to really be sensing in to what is happening with the energy of the wave. And so that's what I think is really useful, is we really tend to take a very like analytical, strategic, let's plan it and let's make sure we know what's happening approach. And you see this even in our agile environments, right? We still are trying to figure it out, to know in advance. And yes, we want to be open to change and adapting, but do we really live that? Or are we living it enough to be getting the benefits of business agility, to really be innovative and responsive and harnessing change for our advantage versus resisting it, or trying to over plan and micromanage the situation. So I hope that's a helpful explanation of like, what does this really mean, this idea of riding the waves instead of trying to control the ocean?
Yeah, definitely, definitely, and it reminds me of a phrase that my father used in workshops. That he says, like, you have to get into the water to feel it. You have to get into the sea, and yeah, from the beach you can imagine all kind of things, but as long as you don't get in, as long as you don't experience it, you don't know how wet the water feels. You
Mhm.
have no idea what it is, and then you have no idea how the waves will behave. You
Yeah,
can, like you
and
say, you can predict or try to predict from the beach, but that's it. That's
mhm.
it's not feeling it.
Yeah, and I think even if you aren't a surfer, as you're pointing out, we can still relate to this idea, right? Because we have likely interacted with the ocean, and
Mhm.
have that felt sense and kind of almost like a healthy fear, a healthy respect of, the power of the ocean and the the constant change and almost like the expansiveness and the possibility and kind of this almost like different way of seeing the world than a lot of times we're used to looking around and like really just looking at it from a like, okay, what do I need to do next? What do I have to do? What do I have to do tomorrow? And, trying to micromanage our days and our weeks. And, when you can really like take a moment, pause, go look at the ocean or any form of nature, really, when we can just get out in nature, we can really connect more to kind of like the essence, I think, of who we are and our connection to this bigger thing that we don't fully understand and that actually operates in a naturally emergent way, right? We talk a lot about emergence in the agile world, but do we really understand it? And I think we need to reconnect to like our humanity, because I think we kind of have gotten disconnected from our humanity and how it relates to the natural world around us.
Yeah, I recognize a lot of that. Although I'm not a surfer, I have some friends who love surfing. So yeah, I love this analogy to learn about that. So thanks for sharing that. Well, let's. We've already been talking for a while without even that first question. I really love that. It really feels like really aligned. So let's jump into that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
I think this is something a lot of people don't know about me. I have talked about it. And so it depends on which circle you're in, and how
Course,
long you've
yeah.
been maybe reading my newsletter. But when I was 29, I quit my job. I had a great job. I didn't quit because I was unhappy, or I wouldn't say I wasn't burnt out. There were moments of burnout, but it wasn't like a catastrophe situation. But I quit a great job to travel. And I traveled through Central and South America for over a year. And I will say it was like a backpacker style trip, budget backpacking. And so I was like the oldest backpacker on the trail, because most people do that in like a gap year, or maybe right after college. And I was, I'm here like almost 30 years old, and I'm like, all right, like doing the backpacker thing. And the way that really influenced who I am is it was really about sort of realizing and embracing my own priorities and like kind of breaking out of like what we are told we're supposed to do or what success looks like, or these beliefs of like no, you got to like work hard, save a lot of money, and then it's when you retire you do things like that. And so it really helped clarify my values for me. And it was essential in sort of creating the new beliefs and like really living into new beliefs, that I wanted to live into. And, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I realized I had loved travel before that. I knew that I wanted to explore the world, but there's a big difference between doing that in like a 2-week vacation once a year, versus, really living your life, exploring different places, and meeting new people, and I think when you do kind of the more of the travel sabbatical type of approach, where you have this extended time and it's not a vacation away from your life, it is your life, you're really able to see more. It's you're not looking at this as like, oh, I have this like checklist, I need to like see this, do this, get a photo with this, experience this, and then like rush off to the next thing. It's you're going at a slower pace, and you are really like aware. And like I feel like for me, I got very curious about trying to understand like, oh, I'm noticing this is happening. I wonder what that's about, like, and realizing like, oh, that would not happen normally, like if in my normal day to day and in Ohio, and just getting, just being more aware, noticing things, and also sort of noticing like where my own cultural bias might have been judging things. And this is, of course, a choice we all make. Like, we're going to judge, we have biases. And it's more of like, if you're going at a slower pace and you have a real intention around why you're traveling, that is different from like, I just want to escape, I want a vacation, or I want to see some cool stuff. It's like I can have all of those things, and I can grow myself. I can grow my understanding of the world, and I don't mean understanding in terms of like figuring it all out, and having like some new mental model of like exactly what the world is, but more of like that developing the capacity of openness and curiosity, and starting to appreciate the differences, and also seeing like the similarities.
I like that. I like that. And indeed, I can imagine that maybe not everybody know that about. I would call it this experience. Could you give an example on how this influences you on a day-to-day basis? I don't know how it practically influences you.
I think it practically influenced me in one big way, was doing something that was counter to the cultural understanding, at least the cultural understanding I grew up in, and like started to challenge, what I would look at as like kind of our capitalist Western capitalism, like strive, succeed, work hard. Your worthiness is attached to your success, and like you got to keep climbing the ladder. Like all of that stuff that never really felt great to me, even though I was totally in those systems, like I was totally striving. It didn't fully feel right, and it was my first big challenge to that. And so it showed me that, one, I can do a hard thing. Like, I was not fluent in Spanish. I wasn't even close to fluent in Spanish. This is before we had like I don't think I had a phone. Like I didn't have, my phone only worked on Wi-Fi. Like I didn't have a local SIM to like just pull up Google Maps. And, so it was like a different way of traveling then too. I'm giving away my age. But it was a whole different world. And so it was me taking what felt like a really big risk, both financially, right? Quitting my job, also executing on this. Like, yeah, my planning and organization skills did come into play. And there was also like a flexibility and like a creating with what was happening and making choices in the moment. So it was like doing hard things, going out on my own, like solo travel as a backpacker in foreign countries where like I don't have a network of people, I don't know people, I don't have friends. I had to making friends, and like connecting over language barriers and cultural barriers, or I don't even want to say cultural barriers, just differences that we have to figure out and navigate. So there was like the doing the hard thing, like showing myself like I can do this, and also the realizing like when I listen to myself, like when I listen to my intuition, when I do things that are driven by my values, when I am cultivating the beliefs that sort of like compete with the belief that has been handed to me from all the systems around me and the culture, when I do those things, I can reap incredible rewards. And so I think that experience like is part of what led me to the career path I've had, becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a professional Scrum trainer, doing business differently than others might, having a different business model, and how I do coaching with teams and organizations, creating my own, like trusting in my way of, how do we get better? How do we improve? And being able to see like, hey, I think that we need to grow these other skill sets. And I don't see anything out there that's really designed and geared in the way I think it should be, to helping, product managers, or to helping leaders who are trying to do the right thing for their Scrum teams but don't know how to do it, to help individuals who are struggling with like maybe the frustration of trying to do something in a certain way and bumping up against, the organization isn't doing it that way today. So how do you like sit in this in between? How do you influence change in a way that is like still co-creative and still embraces like everybody, other people's perspectives, and is inclusive, and isn't just like, I got to just come in here and drive this forward. There's only one way, right? And it's like, well, actually, the whole point is there isn't just one right way. That's kind of the point of agility. And so it's like realizing that the challenges I had in my like early days when I made that transition from like traditional waterfall IT project manager to like, okay, now we're doing Scrum. This is a whole new world. And then diving, down that path of my career, right? Like I had all of these struggles too. And so with like the plan driven predictive way that our organizations operate, and I thought I knew, I thought I had all the right answers. And I was like, and I had some success, but also I look back and I'm like, oh, I could have done that differently. And it could have maybe even been better. I don't, and so just the things that I felt that would have helped me. And then also like the learning I've done and growing myself outside, I would say, of like the traditional agile spaces, being able to bring those concepts and tools into like, and integrating them in a way that is useful for people in the agile space.
That's wow. I can just say wow. That's a little bit the. I love your authenticity. I love how you share your story, and indeed how you, well, the fact indeed going to a different country and yeah, not knowing anyone. It immediately also sparked the question: does that also mean that for you, it's now easier to make friends anywhere?
That's interesting. It's definitely easier for me to engage with people and, really kind of come into it in a truly more open way of like wanting to understand and not judging. And like a true curiosity and like an interest in like, I would love to understand more about this place that I am. And I can bring that into like a company, right? It's, what's this company like? What's this team like? And so also I think the other big thing is it required me to get over a fear, that I think that fear exists in all types of, your question is really interesting because it's like, I think this fear can show up in any of our relationships where we're like coming into a new team, a new organization, and we're working in a different part of a company or a multinational. And now I'm working with this department in a different part of the world. And there's likely cultural differences, like both the actual geography of it and also, just that department's different. And so really not being there's sort of like a thing that happens of like, you can be afraid to say the wrong thing or afraid to do the wrong thing. And or you come in with a little bit of like, you think, instead of like coming in with like, I'm here to learn, I'm here to get to know people, I'm here to understand. And I'm also not afraid of getting it wrong, because I'm doing my best. I am coming into this with trying to be aware of my own biases and judgments. And I am open to being corrected. And that goes a long way when, you realize you've made a mistake and somebody kind of points it out to you, or maybe you just notice it yourself, being able to recover and, not fall into like some sort of like shame spiral or just get defensive or like just, freeze. And, so I do think there's an interesting parallel there, that helps me just feel more comfortable, just being me and showing up as me and wanting to know who you are as and not take myself too seriously in those interactions.
I like that indeed. Yeah, not taking yourself too seriously. I think it helps in all kind of things, and somehow, um, yeah, I think I see with a lot of people, and I just for myself as well. The moment you grow up, when you become an adult, you think, "Oh, from now on, I have to be seriously," and that's actually the biggest trap there is. I would
Yes.
say.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Let's move to that second question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what would have become of you?
Well, very early on, I think I had this dream of becoming an astronaut, or at least,
Wow.
and then I think like that turned into like I want to work for NASA, and I was like I'm going to major in aeronautical engineering because that's how I'm going to work for NASA.
Mhm,
And then when I got into college, I was kind of like, and I took my first class in that, I was like, is this really what I want to do? Like,
mhm.
and the other things that I would say, the other interests or passions that I still do have are writing and photography. So a big part of when I took my travel sabbatical was writing and photography. That kind of became like what I was doing. And I wasn't doing it to like make money, run a business type of thing. I did it for me and like to hone my photography skills. And I still write today.
I was
I'm
about
not,
to say you
yeah.
have a book, you write a blog that is rather successful, where people, yeah, you keep writing, so that is maybe different kind of writing as what you
Yeah,
taught when you were younger, but you're a writer. You've published a book, so yeah, and even I would say even a blog is writing as well. It shouldn't always be a book.
true. Yeah.
So
I
so
also
yeah.
won a trophy when I was a kid for a Power of the Pen competition.
Wow, that's wonderful. So yeah, so there is
There's a theme.
yeah, exactly. There is a team, and it's I really love this question because with many people I've noticed that indeed there is parts of what we want to become that we partially are. I guess you don't go to space for your hobby, so that part is probably not there.
Maybe
Um,
one day soon,
but
maybe.
well, we don't know how easy it will go in the
You
future
got to
to
get
go
the
to space, of
affordability
course.
piece.
There is that, definitely there is that, or make the right friends. That could also help out. But really, but that would be a challenge. Well, then talking about challenge, what do you consider your biggest challenge? At least the biggest challenge that you want to share openly on the internet, and why is that a good thing for you?
So I think my biggest challenge, it's something that I think I've made a lot of progress in overcome. I don't even want to say overcoming. Like it's just working on it and like moving it in a direction that is useful to me. And that biggest challenge has been really not being in tune or in balance or having like an integration of the full range of my leadership. So where I'm at now is I am in the practice. I'm always in the practice of integrating the like strategic and analytical side of leadership with the more like relational, intuitive and energetic side of leadership. And
Mhm.
so I was very like strategic, analytical, plan it, do it, it's got to be right, like, perfectionist, all of that. And over the last several years, like in my own just like personal growth journey, some of that's connected to agility because that isn't a great way to approach our work if we're wanting to take an agile approach, although it's what we still see a lot of. But also just my own personal development, growing through developing my coaching and facilitation skills and my own leadership skills, kind of being able to like sort of access and unlock and also see the value in the balancing this other aspect of leadership. There's so much information that is lost when we're not paying attention to the relational aspect of leadership, to the intuitive and the energetic side of leadership. And so I think in my work, I have struggled with this a lot. And like I said, I don't think I've overcome it. I think leadership is like a journey, not a destination. And I think this is the work I'm always going to be doing. I'm always going to be in the practice of this.
Mhm.
But since so many people struggle with this, it helps me actually be able to design learning experiences, coaching experiences, things like that, that help others on that journey as well. And I think this is like super key to the work we're trying to do in organizations and like shifting the needle towards like real agility benefits. But also like beyond that, right? Just really being able to access our full range of leadership, I think makes a huge difference in how we show up in our lives, how we see the world, how we see ourselves, and how we can then be more sort of like responsible in how we are choosing to engage with life.
Wow. Wow. To choose to engage with life. That's, yeah, I'm really in awe with a lot of your answers, because that's, yeah, these are profound answers, I would say. When you talk about this challenge and the the could you say some more about the good thing? Why is that a good thing for you? Is there, yeah, I don't know. Do you know this? This is something you discovered at some point, that there is a good part of that? And how did
Um,
you discover that?
I think it's a good thing because I think a lot of times we go through life not even seeing the thing, right? Like not even seeing like our biggest challenge. And so to me, it's a good, and we all have them, right? Like none of us are like well, some people might be walking around like totally enlightened, um, you know, but most of us probably aren't. And so I think that it's a good thing to just even see it. And there's just so much power in once we notice it. And as long as we can stay out of judgment, that's work too. It's like you don't want to judge yourself when you notice it coming up, because then that kind of puts you more into the reactivity of it. But it's like, oh, I can see it and I can accept it and I can see the gifts in that side of me, and I can also be more conscious of choosing like there's actually more that I want to explore. Like there's another side of this I want to explore. And I
Mm,
think when we're able to see those things more clearly, right, then we are able to lead conversations differently. In our teams, in our organizations, with our families, and we're kind of like able to when we can see it in ourselves and know that we have these sort of like blind spots for ourselves, and we're in the practice of starting to notice them sooner so that we have more opportunity to make shifts that are actually going to move us in the direction we want to go. And then we can, by modeling that, by doing that, it helps us actually be able to facilitate conversations in that way for others, not in a way where we're going around telling people like you're like this and you're like that and that's not okay, right? Then that's coming from this place of judgment again. But it's more just like embracing our full humanity versus rejecting parts of ourselves. So I think that if when I want to learn something hard from somebody, if that person comes at it from the perspective of, well, here's how you do it. It's quite simple. Like learn this theory, here's these steps, here's this process. I'm great at it, so you're going to be great at it. I don't really think that that's as effective with complex skills, and that's what we're talking about, our leadership and how we're showing up in the world and how we see the world and how our relationship to ourselves, our relationships to others, and also the ability to blend in the strategic and analytical. Like that is not easy. And we're dealing with dilemmas where there are no easy answers. There's not a lot of like binary choices, although sometimes we put ourselves into the binary choices and we limit our options, and therefore we limit innovation and we limit inclusivity. And so, I think that being able to bring this other form of leadership to life, and start to notice in ourselves, what has been our challenge, and what is the work that we're doing on that. It helps us do that with others, and do it from a place with maybe being less in judgment of ourselves and the others, and being more just accepting of ourselves and others as well, because that's who we are. Like, we're human.
Mm. The Yeah, it's interesting because when you say it's about accepting ourselves, it's about accepting others, but there is also, I want to go back a little bit to what you said, that it's not because what worked for one person that it automatically works for somebody else that
Right.
is maybe completely different. And
Right.
again, there is no, I want to link these two concepts, because there is not, it's not because it doesn't work for you that, or for me, that either of us would be less valuable or that we are not succeeding. No, it's maybe because that plan was very great for that one person, but the two of us, were different,
Yeah.
and yeah, it 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 might work for us, but it might not, and yeah, and we might, maybe it's even easier for us if we do something else
Mm-hmm.
than that other person, and so there is no value in doing it this or that way, and there is much more value in discovering what works for us, although that's usually a lot harder, because that's the thing. If people can sell you, oh, this is a 10 step plan to do this or that, yeah, that's an easy sell,
Mm-hmm.
but in reality, we still have to do the work,
Yep.
and for me, a big part of the work is discovering the steps, and it could be that the 10 steps are good for many people, but still not for everybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why it's like, it's more of like an invitation for people to explore,
Mm,
and they have to do the work, right? Like, I can support them and I can offer ideas, but I also need to be receptive to, like, hearing what's working for them and what's not working for them. And then maybe I can help offer other ideas and co-create different strategies with them. But yeah, you're right. At the end of the day, like, we have to do that work, but it is work that I don't think we can fully do alone. Because it's almost like we need feedback, like we need other
mm,
perspectives. And, somebody might give me feedback and I might disagree with that feedback, like with their perception of something or or I may be okay that I'm having that impact on somebody.
mm,
And but the thing is, if I'm not open to hearing the feedback and actually, like, considering it and reflecting on it, then I've lost an opportunity there. So, I'm a very, like, independent person. I mean, you are talking to somebody who went on a solo travel sabbatical for over over a year.
exactly.
I'm very much an introvert as well. Like, I am perfectly happy to spend time alone. And I also have kind of, like, I think, socialized into me from my own lived experiences, this, like, fierce independence too, around, like, not wanting to be dependent on others, which is interesting given, like, the work I do, but I know it's there. There's just, like, some tendency there. And so what has been really important to me, in my journey, is when I kind of started seeing things differently and realizing, oh, there's these other things, and I'm kind of missing this because I have so much armor on, or, I never knew this before. I didn't see things this way before. I realized that I needed to be in relationship. I needed to have others around me. And so going into specific programs that were like containers for doing this work together was very helpful. But to your point, choosing the right containers where their approach is not dogmatic, where their approach is still empowering you. And, it's not a one size fits all. It's more of like, here's an offering and here are some things to try. And hey, by the way, I'm here to support you, and let me offer some feedback, or let's have a conversation about that, and let's get creative and talk about ways forward. Those types of relationships. So, like, going into formal learning containers like that, but also, like, having people around me that I go to have leadership conversations with, where, like, we are, it's not a formal learning program. We have just chosen to, like, stay in this community and, work together, and like we're all committed to growing ourselves and our leadership. And so we help each other with that.
That's yeah, I love that. It's about community and about growing. And actually, there is in all your answers today, there is a lot of drive, a lot of passion. Do you have any idea where that passion, where that drive is coming from? Is that all because of that trip that you took, or was that already there in you before that?
Mhm. It was definitely there before that. It was part of probably what got me to want to do that and also make it happen. Um, this is an interesting question, because what I want to say, and what I probably would have said years ago, is I want to make a difference. I want to make an impact. And while I don't think that's like not true, I think I've come to also look at it as like, what really drives me is my desire to like experience joy and beauty and connection, right? To kind of like keep living my most wonderful life, whatever that looks like. And so, and sort of like that's, it's almost like I've realized that there's actually more to life than just like accomplishing something or making a difference or having an impact. And yes, I want to have purpose. It's really important to me to be working towards something meaningful. And at the end of the day, I also just really want to have joy and beauty and connection in my life, and and in my work, but also in other aspects of my life.
All right. And you said you would have answered differently a couple of years ago. What shifted? What made that shift?
I think it is part of my own journey of like detaching myself from what I perceive as kind of like a toxic relationship to like productivity and achievement, and like how we define success, and like what our relationship to success is, where it feels very like judgmental, of like like your worthiness is attached to those things. And you mentioned earlier that I'm very passionate. I am very passionate. I really am. And like, I'm also like very driven, and I'm very high energy. And like, I get stuff done. Like if it's important, and like I will get it done. So there is like this drive of like accomplishment and doing work that's impactful. It's there, but also like, I think I don't get up every day. I don't want to get up every day and be like, if I don't make a difference today, then it wasn't a good day. Or if I don't achieve this thing today, then it wasn't a good day. It's like, I feel like you can have both. And like, where I'm trying to focus my attention, because I think it's useful for me where I am in my journey, is, it's about how I'm experiencing every day in terms of finding joy, beauty, and connection.
I like that. I like that very much. So yeah, that is quite a journey in that way. And talking about journeys and talking, because it's for me, it's also a kind of achievement. What do you consider your biggest achievement so far? And when I ask this question, one of the things I've noticed is that for some people it's really hard to, because this is basically a moment to brag and to be really proud. Is it easy for you, Stephanie, to be proud, to brag about stuff?
Um, I am a proud. Yeah. Like I don't
Mm,
really hesitate to like talk about my achievements. And so I would say like from a professional standpoint, there's kind of been a journey in that, and just like it started with like becoming a professional scrum trainer, the work I've done through that as like being a courseware steward for the PSM curriculum, running Train the Trainers. Like I really loved doing those things, like being able to be part of other people's journeys, and like being able to do work I love to start with, but then also like I hope that other people are loving this work and helping them in that journey as well. And being able to write a book. I never thought I'd write a book. I didn't want to write a book. That was not a thing on my radar. But working with Simon Randall, and that's how that started. That's how that unfolded through working with him as a curriculum steward. And then I would say the other big kind of, it's business related, but I would say it's life related. That led me to then being able to become an entrepreneur. I think it was in 2016, starting my own business that allowed me to kind of go beyond Scrum, to the Scrum and that helped me develop more personally because I was out seeking more to help my clients. And starting to realize oh, what else do people really need? What do we need to be integrating so that, we know Scrum, but why are we not effective with it? What else is out here? And then I would say in another level of achievement or a different area of my life, becoming a surfer. Again, not something I planned, was not a goal. I'm from Ohio, so no oceans anywhere nearby. But becoming a surfer in my late 30s is another big thing. And now I'm combining surfing and the work I do in agility and leadership development, running leadership surf camps. So I would say there's a few different achievements in there, but they're in different realms of my big journey and where I am today.
I like that. Really, yeah. So that brings back to what do you consider your biggest achievement? The main question of this.
It's hard to say the biggest because they all kind of led to each other. And so I guess if I had to say the biggest, it would be becoming a surfer and combining that passion with integrating it with agility and leadership development. The other things did help lead to that, but where I'm at now, I guess I have to say that's the biggest achievement. And it just feels like it's fully integrating all aspects of both my strengths and also the lived experience of my career and growing myself in order to be better in my work.
And is that also something when you say you be better in your work, is that something you feel also when you're surfing? Okay, I need to move this or that and stay longer. I don't know how do you that's the question is, how do you define what is better when you surf?
I love that question. So it's actually all on my mind right now because I'm preparing for a leadership surf camp next week. And so the structure of that is there's kind of these lessons, these surf lessons for leadership and business agility. And it's interesting because, and I've written about this too. So you'll see articles I've written around this topic. And it's been in my newsletters, but this idea that a lot of times people might say, oh, how many, your session is successful if you caught a lot of waves. And what's interesting about that is I used to kind of measure my own surfing success early on in my surf journey by that. And what I realized is that it really sent me into reactivity a lot because I would be upset if I wasn't catching enough waves in a 2-hour surf session. And I would start comparing myself to other surfers, be oh my gosh, that guy's got another wave. Why can't I catch any waves? Right. And then I'm in my head and I'm no longer actually truly present and aware and noticing the energy and sensing and responding as the wave comes. So instead of kind of looking, noticing, feeling, the energy of the wave, I go for that wave and I miss it, but I'm all upset about it. So I'm not really learning from the failed attempt at catching the wave if I'm in this reactive state. Now, if I can look at it as you know what, oh, I noticed this pattern. I'm going to stay out of comparing myself to others. I'm going to watch this surfer. I'm going to notice what they're doing because it's helpful for me to see the surfer. Where is that person when they take off on the wave? right? How close to the peak are they? Like, did it look like they had to have a lot of speed to get into it, or less speed? Like, where did they angle? So I can watch and learn from others, which is very different from comparing myself to others. And then so the next wave comes, and now I have information. I've been noticing what other people are doing, especially if they're maybe more advanced surfers than me. And I've also had my own misses where I didn't get into the wave, and I can recognize, oh, okay, like that wave broke sooner than I expected. I'm going to like integrate that knowledge. So the next wave, I've got this new knowledge. And I still might get it wrong because the waves are not consistent. They don't, like it's not a wave pool out in the ocean, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Well, fortunately, because that's where the fun and the mirroring real life comes into play. But I have a better chance of catching that wave, right? If I am staying present still in my body versus getting stuck in my head, like spinning a story or judging and getting upset about it, right? So you cannot measure your success just by how many waves you catch. Now, do I track it? Do I notice it? Sure. I might have a goal when I'm early on in surfing of like, I'd really like to try to catch 8 waves in this 2-hour session. But also, I have to look at what is happening in the ocean today. Maybe the conditions are not really great for me to have a good chance of catching that many waves. Right. And so there's this like recognizing like what is even possible here. And also, given what's happening in the ocean, what should I be working on? Like, what is the skill I want to work on that I want to be growing? And then the other piece that has become really important for me, that I've translated this into kind of like the rest of life, and you'll probably notice a theme from before, an earlier question, is like, did I enjoy myself in this session? Did I
Mhm.
notice like how just incredibly beautiful the sky looked, or how cool it was to like look back and see the palm trees against the mountains when I was out in the ocean? Am I like, did I like get delighted because a pelican like was surfing the wave near me and I got to see it fly through, right? So again, it's that like you don't want to miss the opportunities for like beauty and joy and connection all around you. And so I have like this much more robust way of looking at like, was that a good surf session? And like, I don't even like the binary of good, bad, right, or wrong,
Ah,
because it often sends us into judgment. And
exactly.
I had a really big problem, and I had to work hard to get over this. If I came out of the ocean, somebody would ask me, "How was your surf session?" And that question would just piss me off. And like, and the reason is because it sent my head into judgment in a way I didn't like. And I was like, I don't want to have to say my surf session was good or bad. But the problem wasn't them. The problem was me. It was how I was interpreting that question, right? As this like good, bad.
You
And
could
so,
also said it was fun or it was, I don't know,
exactly.
something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I could say, well, it was really challenging out there today. you know so again, it was like a realization of like, oh, I still have some work to do here. This is not their fault. And I think that little tiny story, that tiny example, I think you can see that in a lot of parts of life, where, it's like, what's the thing though? Like each person might have their thing of like, it sends them straight into like reactivity, but if they actually are able to like kind of stay with that and kind of be like, wow, that's not really what I want to happen. And I don't want to feel that way. Like, what is behind this? Like, why is this happening? And then can I be with it differently?
Mhm. It's yeah, I think it's so interesting to hear you say when you get a question, you have all these emotions, but now you realize that the emotions had not so much to do with the question, but more with your inner state.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see when, well, when I'm not a surfer, but I can imagine if I'm out surfing, that it would be completely being in the moment, and having receiving a question makes me immediately get out of that and put me back into my head in a way. So
Mhm.
I can imagine that that is like, hey, why are you even asking. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine, and just letting that and thinking like, okay, but I shouldn't just answer it with my head. I can answer it with my
Mhm.
body as well. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I notice I'm tired or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it also it also what it was causing me to do was also look at the fact that I didn't have a great time in the ocean, and that's because I was in a reactive state, right? I was in this like striving mode of like I have to achieve, and I was getting mad at the ocean. That might sound ridiculous, but let me tell you, if you try to learn to surf, you are going to get mad at the ocean. I think it's like it has to happen to some degree, right? Like and then you start to be like, this is ridiculous. This makes no sense. But if you look at it, it's like we do this all the time. We get mad at the circumstances that are happening around us. We get mad at the dynamics we're seeing in our organization, like what's happening in the economy, and like or in in our a certain community group, like something that's happening, and so again, like there's so many parallels, and I just think that like the ocean has shown me like deeper and deeper levels of like realizing like, oh, this is like some belief I'm holding, or this is a judgment I have, or this is a thing that like is a pattern of reactivity, and I want to be more aware of it. So I just think it's such a powerful way to start to like really deepen beyond like knowing theories and tools. And so creative versus reactive leadership, I've been using that term reactive, but it's a tool I talk about a lot, a concept and a tool of creative versus reactive leadership. And I have done deep dives into this work in, like learning contexts and leadership retreats. And it just went to such a deeper level when I, like later after I finished the learning. And I just was out there and I'm like, oh my God, this is that thing we did in the leadership retreat that's coming up. I notice it, right? And then I became more intentional around like working through it and then reflecting on how it's showing up outside the ocean as well.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so nice that the things about leadership that, well, people think it's about work, but it's about personal things as well, and that makes us learn again much more at a deeper level, and the deeper connection that helps again at work. And
Mhm.
that's so. This is what I yeah. When I hear you talk about leadership, surf, yeah, training, I'm like, yeah, this sounds wonderful, because it's connecting a lot of these things at a different kind of level. And yeah, when we talk about leadership, it's very tempting to when we try to do the perfect leader, to blame the our team that is not
Mhm.
behaving, whatever.
Yep.
And just like you say, well, that doesn't make any sense, but it's very tempting with humans. But with the sea, well, good luck with that, because the sea is the sea. There's no way you can influence. You can just surf it,
Mhm.
and I think that makes it so much, I
Yeah.
think, easier to understand, and at the same time more frustrating, because yeah,
Yeah.
then you realize it's about you and not about
Mm.
the surroundings or the other
Yeah.
people.
Well, and you've just called out something really, I think I hadn't really thought of it this way, but you said it very directly. Like, at least in our organizations, we actually do kind of have some influence. Maybe
Mhm.
not as much as we would like. And there's a broad spectrum of what that could look like depending on the situation. But yeah, it's like we often think like, oh, I can't, because like all of this is beyond my control. And a lot is beyond our control, and we have some influence. But you're right, I have no influence on the ocean. Like my control point is choosing to paddle out or not. And that's still important. I think it's a similar lesson too of like I'm choosing, like, is it safe for me to paddle out today? Like, are the conditions, am I at the level I need to be at for this? Like, do I have the energy today? Based on how powerful the waves look, right? So like we have choices in the ocean like that. But yeah, we're not influencing the ocean, or at least I haven't figured that one out yet.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the thing. And even if we might be able to influence inside the company, we still have way more influence on ourselves, and that
Yep.
usually is the more positive way of
Yeah.
getting there.
And what's interesting about it is we're often trying to influence. A lot of times we might be talking about an organizational impediment that's impacting our team, or there's like a dynamic in the team that's like, kind of causing challenges. And we're trying to influence. But the way we're showing up is actually kind of having the opposite impact, and we're not noticing that, right? And a lot of it's because we're coming in thinking we know the right answer. We're not coming at it from an open and curious state. And we're also sometimes like just feeling like we have to get it right, and versus being willing to take like more of that iterative, like let's try something, let's run an experiment, let's get back together and see what we learned from that, and then adapt our approach next time, right? And so even though like we're all trained in doing this, like we're all trained theoretically, and we know tools and techniques, but a lot of times we're kind of stuck with like, but this is the tool I know. And so we're like, it's got to look like this, but we're not really sensing and responding. And to me, like that's what the whole surfing thing is about. It's having you sense what's actually happening, right? And so maybe there's a tool that feels like it might be the right fit for the type of challenge we're having, and we can try it. But then we still need to recognize like it's an experimental process, it's an iterative process, it's adaptive. And so like that's the way you actually influence change in an organization.
Yeah, exactly. That's the change. Really wonderful. And I want to move to that next question. Do you have a personal agility tip to share? And I have the feeling we talked already about a lot of things that could be seen as personal agility tips, but is there
Yeah.
something else that you want to share?
We have been talking a lot about it, but I'll kind of bottom line it a little bit in a more succinct way. What I have found is that growing your own leadership capacity is the key to greater agility. And when I say agility, right, like I mean like our ability to respond to change, our ability to focus and maximize value, minimize risk, like kind of like, but in all aspects of life. But this idea of leadership capacity, what I'm talking about is we tend to focus a lot on like learning, here's a new skill, a tool, a framework. And the challenge with that is like we're learning a new thing, but we're not really expanding our capacity to be with more complexity, to be with more uncertainty, to be able to even see things clearly enough to apply the right tool, and or be open enough to saying, well, we don't have a tool, we need to create one that works for this context. And so this idea of like we focus a lot on learning things, and growing our knowledge and even our skills of using a tool, but it's like what actually is essential when we're dealing with more adaptive challenges is this idea of growing your capacity, and then that affects how we choose the approach, what tools we try, and then how resilient we are when something doesn't work out. And that's what creates our ability to sort of step into more unknown, and to be able to change sort of our relationship to like how we see things over time. It's like we have a more expansive view. So that's what I mean by growing leadership capacity.
Yeah, it's yeah, I like it, and at the same time, it's I'm struggling a little bit with the word leadership in this case because it's with a lot of times leadership people think about a certain position and certain things where
Right.
what you describe is really it applies to everybody, right? So
Yeah,
that
and that's how I use the term leadership is like we're all leaders.
Mhm.
And this idea, you'll hear a lot of coactive language in how I speak because about leadership, because that is kind of the school that I've grown up in, I would say. But I also combine with quite a few others. And what I've noticed that's interesting is they're all kind of saying the same stuff, even though they use different language, which I think is great because it means we're tapping into some universal truths here. Like, with this idea of we're all leaders, because we're always creating an impact, even if we're not conscious of it, right? And there's another definition of leadership I really like from Amanda Blake. And her book is, I think it's called Embodied Leadership, or that's the concept she talks about, is embodied leadership. The book is called Your Body is Your Brain. And so
Yeah.
this idea of embodied leadership is, it's a relationship driven process of connecting to what matters, envisioning new possibilities, and taking action to bring a vision to life. And so, yeah, you're probably working with other people to do that at some point. Whether it's a partner, your family, friends, your coworkers, a manager in a company, an executive in a company, your team, whatever that might be. It's a relationship-driven process, but it's tapping into this fact that we all are leaders, right? If we're trying to accomplish something and it involves other people kind of getting on board, it doesn't have to be, like running a company. It doesn't just have to be, a specific product development initiative. And so, we're co-creating our life every day and how we're showing up and how we're relating to people. And so that's really what I mean around leadership. And so I love the idea of personal agility, because, well, one, like, what is more complex and uncertain and always changing than life, every aspect of life, right? Like, we use the agility term to talk about work and business. But the reality is, like, if you believe that's true for work, you probably are noticing that it's true for life, like taking an agile approach. And so with leadership, I think there's a personal aspect of leadership. And I sometimes talk about it as like inside out leadership, because it like starts on the inside. And if you do have a position of authority, right? If you do have hierarchical leadership and certain responsibilities in an organization, for like, a product area or running the company, a department, whatever that may be, you still need this core of leadership, right? You might have other responsibilities, and you might be like more formal in the vision you're holding, and how you're enabling other people. And it's, but it's still at the end of the day, I still think it's got to start from this inside out leadership.
Yeah, and the book you talked about, I thought I'd bring it up because I like the book as well. This is
Yeah.
the book, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great book. I love it.
So yeah, really thankful to bring that, because it's, I wanted to stress that part, because so many people confuse that leadership with position, and I see so much different kind of styles that could be put, and yes, a position is one way of using leadership, but that's just one way, and I'm not even sure that it's the best way, or I'm definitely sure it's not the best way. And there's many different styles of leadership, and anyone can show leadership at some level. And the more we take our responsibility, and the more we feel that, without needing any power, that usually is what I like it most.
Yeah.
I want to move to that next question. What have you learned about remote work? And maybe before we jump into that, when did you start first remote work? Was that during COVID? Was that during the moment that you traveled around? Did you do remote, or was there some other moment that you learned about remote working?
Well, I did do some remote work before COVID. And it was usually in the capacity of the collaborative work I was doing with scrum.org. Since we're an international trainer community spread all around the world. And yeah, we did have these in-person, well, we do again now, these in-person face-to-face events. And there were times that we'd be working on an initiative where we would all gather, the group of people who were working on that, and spend time in a room. But there was definitely work that had to be done remotely. And so it wasn't like my full-time job or anything. happening. But there was some of that. And then all of the actual training I did, though, pre-COVID was in person. So with my clients, I was always pretty much in person. And then, of course, fast forward, and most of my work is remote now. I still have some in-person training, but honestly, it's not that much. In the US, we're not seeing as much of a return to in-person training. And like also just as an entrepreneur where you're kind of running your own business, it's like there's other work too, that's involved, beyond training. So I feel like it's definitely shifted over the years, but that's kind of my experience with remote work.
Mm-hmm. So, and what did you learn?
And what's interesting is I've learned a lot, I think, from observing my clients. When you start to see like what are they struggling with, and not just my clients, but also my colleagues. I know a lot of people who do have, full-time remote, work that they've been doing. And I think that, I guess, what have I learned? It can be done well or it can be done poorly. Like that's the big learning around it. I think there's an interesting thing happening, I think, especially right now, that the focus has been so much on getting the work done and like managing that people are getting the work done and making sure we know that people are getting the work done, that I think we're neglecting like the relational aspects of what it means to get work done, but also like, are we even getting the right work done? I think there's probably a lot of root causes. It's hard to know what's a symptom, what's a root cause. And I think it might look different in different organizations in different contexts. So I think that's partly why I haven't like come up with my own hypothesis around like, here are the things that I think are the biggest challenges. I think there are certainly patterns and themes. But I just feel like there isn't as much effort being put into growing trust, to supporting people's needs and being seen and having a sense of camaraderie and connection, to truly facilitating shared understanding, having collaborative decision making, effective brainstorming, how we move through conflict and like deal with like unpacking a dilemma and how we navigate through that in ways that, we're going to be growing ourselves as a team, that we're going to be growing our resilience. I just think we're not taking the time to do that as much in a remote setting. And I think there's kind of just, we're not investing in having people that have the skills and the focus, like their focus, their responsibility is sort of on this care and feeding of those team dynamics and like how work gets done. We often look at that as like, oh, those are soft skills. And it's like, do you understand that this is like how we actually, it's like you almost need stronger. I don't know if stronger is the right word, but you almost need like a more intention around facilitation, and brainstorming and coaching and decision making, when you're remote, because it's not as easy to just get in a room and like go through a thing and pick up on all the body language and notice who's saying what and what's not being said in the room. It's harder to pick up on those things, and I just feel like I know there's a lot of people that have great skills in doing this remotely. And what I see is that they're either stretched too thin because they have then on top of it other job responsibilities they've been given, or they're like working with 4 teams, or we're just not hiring those people to support teams. And it's not even the product teams alone that need this, like leadership teams, like who's helping leadership teams collaborate effectively, move through conflict effectively, talk about the big dilemmas they're facing in ways that are generative and constructive and like help them find a way forward and iterate on that.
iterate on that. I think that is an important thing to
Yeah.
well, for a lot of the work that we're doing, and that stays true, and probably even more true if we work remote. So I really like that.
Yeah.
I want to move to that next question, and we already talked about a book, but you is there another book? And I think you even had a couple of books that
Mhm.
you wanted to talk about. So
Yeah, a book that I really love and I recommend to agilists because it's a really different way of approaching agility um, is the book Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown.
mm.
And it's a whole
And
different,
I think
yeah,
that's the book, right?
yes, that's the book. And notice emergent strategy, right? Sounds like a great business book topic, right? Like the title of a book. And we talk about emergence and agile all the time. That word strategy, I really like that. But when you read this book, it's like she has like this beautiful way of speaking to this relational, intuitive, energetic side of leadership and also bringing to life like what it looks like in practice.
Mm.
And it's not written from your kind of traditional product development business perspective. It is written more from like social justice movements perspective, and it is still incredibly relevant. And just everything that's described in this book, it's about agility. It's about bottom up intelligence. It's about being iterative, inspecting and adapting. It's about collective, it's about like consensus based decision making and shared power. It's about everything we talk about wanting to enable in our agile teams and organizations. Um, but we keep missing the mark to some degree, and so like, and sometimes in big ways and sometimes in smaller ways. But I just think it's a really fascinating read that kind of gives you like a whole new way of looking at it. And she brings up a lot about nature. Like she taps into like what we know about the world around us, and how that teaches us about emergent strategy.
I like that. I like that. So thank you. So from what I understand, this is not a book written from within the Scrum world or
Right.
from the Agile world, but it's applicable to our world.
Yep.
That's what I'm getting.
Yep.
So thank you, Dan. And if I remember correctly, you had another book, or I think even two more books that you wanted to talk
Yes.
about.
The other book that I would say is a more traditional recommendation, perhaps, in the Agile world, Unlocking Business Agility with Evidence-Based Management. I
And
am a
that
huge
should be
fan.
this book.
Yes, I am a huge fan of the evidence-based management framework. And part of it is because I think it gives us more structure from the strategic analytical side and like how we execute and like traditional business terms, and the tools we use to do that. But it's doing it in a way that's like honoring like all of these things I've been talking about around like leadership and like what we learned from the ocean around emergence, and the fact that like you can't control the ocean, and that having a goal like catching 10 waves is probably not a great goal. So the book is super it's really wonderfully written in that it's very interesting. Like it's an interesting book to read that both will be like, oh my gosh, we have this exact problem. Like these exact words are being said in my company. And so it's like showing you it's showing you what's happening and why that is problematic. And then also offering like other approaches. But it's also filled with like really great kind of case study type examples that really bring these things to life. So it's like, you've got all these challenges happening, but you don't really know what to do about it. And like, you can't even always pinpoint, you just know something isn't working. This book, I think, illuminates a lot of that. And I like highly recommend it. And every time I teach an evidence-based management class, like I tell my students, I'm like, this book is like a great additional thing to read, because it's not like just, hey, here's what's in the course. It's like another layer of like learning that like goes great on top of that foundation of like taking a training.
Mm-hmm. That is wonderful. I haven't read it because there is like it almost feels like every day there is an agile book coming out on top of all the other books that
I
are
know I
coming
have a
out. So
stack. I have a stack I haven't read yet.
you just have one stack, okay? That's already pretty okay. I think many of us we have a stack or stacks. I think,
I had to
and
stop myself from buying more books. Like the reason I don't have multiple stacks is because a few years ago I was like, nope, can't buy any more books. You got to start working on this.
for me, that worked or that stopped the moment I started reading on Kindle, because I
Um,
what I've done well, the fact that I can order it the moment I want to read helps a lot. But I download all the, what is it, the previews of the books I want to read,
mm,
and the moment I want to read something else, I start to read the preview. Is it okay? I like it, then I continue buying it.
mm.
And the interesting thing is, I buy a lot more books, but I read all of them.
Well,
So
there you
so
go.
it has an opposite effect. So
That's
yeah,
working for you.
the unfortunately I still buy physical books from time to time, because I like also to give them to clients, or
Mhm.
yeah, leave them at clients. And I've noticed that sometimes, well, every time I walk around in a bookstore, I just either I buy nothing or I buy 10 books. There is no it's just like I pick up books. I was like, "Ah, I'm not sure," and then there is one that I do want to buy, and then I buy whatever, a lot more. So yeah, and then I end up with stacks of books, of course.
Well, it's interesting because I have like this thing where I can't read professional books on my Kindle. I have to
Mm,
have the physical book. I think it's partly because I tab the pages, I highlight, and like in professional books, like that's just my approach to reading it. And I know technically you can do that in a Kindle, but just to me, it doesn't feel the same. And I also know I'm never going to go back and look at the highlights and tags on the computer or on the Kindle. So it's just like I know myself, like I need the physical book.
Well,
Yeah.
there is a service. I'm not sure if it's still working, but the I know I subscribe or I use a certain service that is connected to what I read on Kindle, and it sends me from time to time all the sentences that I highlighted on Kindle.
Oh,
So
that's
I get
interesting.
reminders, and it's so
Hmm.
like, hey, these are 5 things you read, or these are things from different kind of books, and that is something I really liked about that.
Oh, that is an interesting
I
service.
haven't received any of these emails in a long time, so I guess that the service no longer works, or stopped working. But that is something that helps me in to do exactly the opposite of what you say, like going back and rereading. And indeed,
Mhm.
with physical books, it's so much easier. For example, I don't want to read a Kindle book for a book club. If I'm in a book club, I
Oh,
want to have the physical book, because indeed,
interesting.
then when I'm discussing it with other
Mhm.
people, I want to look at it. I want to look, and in a Kindle, then flipping through a book during a book club is impossible. So
Your book
yeah.
clubs might be different than mine because my book clubs usually just involve wine and you don't have to read the book.
Okay, but that's yeah.
Usually it's fiction, usually a fiction book.
No, I'm talking about book clubs at
Yeah.
clients to yeah, together learn something. And usually I learn a lot by, yeah, what other people see in the book that I haven't seen. And yeah, even there's multiple books that I've read multiple times, and I still learn things when I use it with a client in a book club. And I
Yeah.
think there was one more other book that is actually not a professional book anymore, or maybe it is, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, it's I just actually started reading it. I haven't finished it and I was in love with the book. I was actually at a what would I call it? I would call it a working retreat for entrepreneurs, for women
Mhm.
entrepreneurs. And we were discussing something, and one of the facilitators was like, I have something for you. She pulled out this book and like flipped to a page and was like, read this. And it just like hit me. I was like, oh, that was so helpful. That's exactly what I've been struggling with. And so this book is called The Creative Act, A Way of Being, and it's by Rick Rubin. who, like, I heard
And
the
that's
name
the
and I
book.
was like, isn't he a music producer? Yeah. And so it's a really beautifully written book, and it's very approachable. And so what's interesting so then I got the book and I started reading it and I'm like, oh, this is connecting to agility. This is connecting to how I talk
Mm,
about leadership, and just the lens though, and like the different language really like just approached it in other ways that made it almost more profound. And I was like, this is what I'm talking about, but he's saying it so perfectly. And so that was like my experience with the book. And it's one of those books that I think you can start and read from like front to back, really short chapters. And like each chapter is like a very specific topic. And it's just like profound, like it's just something profound, like a couple pages. And then it's also the type of book, and it does, I think, build, like there is sort of like a building foundations, but you could also just open it and read a chapter and you would get something out of that too. So it's like that type of
mm.
book. But I'm really enjoying it. I think it's something that is a really cool perspective on how we show up as leaders. And I think it's very like it's also speaking to creative work, which that's what we're doing, right? Like to me, we're all doing creative work. It doesn't have to look like painting. It doesn't have to look like building a sculpture. And he actually addresses that in the book, that like, and that's why it's called the creative act, a way of being. So it's like a way of approaching life. And we are creating our life every single day.
I really love it. I love your description also, and it's not. It is actually the third time that in the podcast that people talk about the book. So just like you say,
Interesting.
it triggers a lot of agilists to think,
Cool.
and indeed. So yeah, it's a book that it was already on my mind when I heard that recruitment, because I admire him as an artist. But when he wrote a book, then I thought, okay, then I'm hearing it's also a physical pleasant book to have, from what I
Mhm.
understand. And so yeah, you again made a great call for having that book, and yeah, and I'm not even. I wanted to say reading, but I'm not even sure it's reading. It's flipping through the book and
Mm.
yeah, going
Yeah,
through
I
that
have a
and
feeling I'm gonna go like front to back, and then I'm gonna do like every morning, just like open it and be like, what is the thing I'm supposed to read today?
mm,
I'm gonna play with this book. I think it's gonna provide a lot of value.
yeah, I think that's that might be a good way. Okay, I want to move to that next question, and for me, it's one of the interesting questions. Like, what's a question do you think I should also ask you, and what is the answer?
Well, at the risk of not being original, the question that you should ask is, what is the future of Agile?
Hmm. And indeed, that is it's very interesting. I've started this podcast 10 years ago in a kind of blog series. So people
Mm.
wrote answers to this, so not in a video chat. And then this question was already in there, and it moved in all kind of directions. In the video, in the conversations, it always boils down to something similar to future of agile and where we are. So and it also tells me something about yeah the age that we're having it, and yeah this and it's not yeah so I'm really looking forward to your answer, because I've noticed that these answers go in all kind of directions.
Hmm.
So I'm really looking forward to what is your answer to that question.
Well, my answer is I don't know.
Hmm.
I do not know. But what I do know is that there is always going to be a need for working in a more agile way, for enabling and empowering self managing collaborative teams, for growing people in their leadership capacity at all levels and in all areas of organizations. Like there's always going to be a need for that. You know, we may change the language we use. We may create different practices and tools and frameworks. We may change our job titles. That's an interesting thing to watch happening on LinkedIn. And like, I'll admit, like, I was very judgmental about it when I first started seeing it happen. And again, noticing like, I'm judging. Where's that coming from? And I may not agree with it, but I also don't know the future. And, you know, language does evolve, practices evolve, tools evolve. What I do know is that the world is not getting any less complex. The world is not getting any more predictable, any less uncertain. Change is still going to happen. We're still not going to be able to control the ocean. And so I think those of us who focus on like the skills that enable more effective collaboration, if it's facilitation skills, coaching skills, and are open and willing to meet people where they are and also co-create with them how they want to move forward. So that's one of the things I think that's really different about how I work with clients is I don't treat it as like I'm an all-knowing consultant that comes in and says, here's the plan and here's what we do. I always try to take a very like co-creative approach where like my role is to support you, to guide you. Yes, that might involve teaching, facilitation. Sometimes I'm going to offer advice. I'm going to share my opinion and perspective. I can get in and help you do the work. I can be collaborative with you in getting things done. But you still own it, right? Like, and if I'm working in a company like where I am really like immersed in it and they're not really hiring me coming in from the outside, we're owning it, right? It's not me. It's not all on me and I'm not the one expert. It's like, how do we co-create this together? And so I think the future is really more about leaning into what agility really has always been about. This idea of being responsive to change, this idea of like focusing on the right work at the right time, this idea of measuring the right things, having goals that create alignment versus competition. Like these are the things that are going to help us move forward, and be able to deliver value, to be able to solve the impossible problems, and really to just be able to create more thriving organizations, thriving communities, thriving societies. So that's the best I've got for that. Is we're still going to be dealing with complexity, uncertainty, change.
I like that because then it doesn't matter what's the name or what's the thing. Like we need to deal with that complexity. We need to deal with that sea and learning how to catch the
Yeah.
waves.
And things like we run around like fighting about what's the best process, what's the best framework, or just like bashing tools. And yeah, I have my own eye roll moments when people say certain things. And, we're staying at the symptom level a lot of times. And so, those people who are able to like move conversations in a direction that we truly get to root causes, that we're able to have like generative conversations that lead us towards inclusive, innovative solutions and take a truly experimental approach where we're actually learning as we go. And we do learn by failure and we integrate that learning into the next iteration. That's what's going to matter.
I really like that. So yeah, that is for me a nice way to talk about the future of agile. So thank you for that answer. I want to move to that already last question. Who do you think I should ask next? And if from what I remember, you had multiple names in mind, I think.
Yes, I offered you 3 names. Jim Remsick is somebody I met at a conference, one conference in this past fall, and I so deeply enjoyed our conversation. And
This is
just
Jim. Am
yeah,
I correct?
that is Jim. He runs. I don't know if he would describe it this way. He runs like a software development company. I don't know if he would call it more of like a studio, but just like we had this, like small business minded though, and kind of like that entrepreneur and like and he's more of that like true developer. And I went to his talk at the conference, which was on the development track. And I just was like, I loved everything he had to say, got to meet him at the speaker dinner and have great conversation with him there. And so just fascinating person. And I think you would have a great conversation.
So thank you for inviting him.
Mhm.
Let's move to that second person.
Yes. So Mary Iqbal, realizing the connection here, actually is who
That
invited
should
me.
be her.
Yes.
Indeed.
Mary invited me to speak at this conference. It was Scrum Day Madison. And I've known Mary for a while. She is a professional Scrum trainer. And actually, I had the honor of her coming kind of up through that path when I was running Train the Trainers. So she's just really great person. Enjoy every time I get to collaborate with her, and she writes a lot too. So I think she's similar to me. Like I think about like communicating and writing and how I'm using that as an educating and support tool for people in the community. And she does a great job writing as well.
So that sounds again like a person that would be lovely to talk again
Yes.
with. And then that third person, what's that last name?
Who did I give you as my third person?
This
Kate.
is the third person.
Kate.
Indeed.
It's like I know because I had names in mind. I'm like, who did I end up with? So Kate, yes. So I've known Kate for a long time as well. I was introduced to her through professional Scrum training, but I actually met her before I was a trainer. I was just attending a class in Boston, and she is from Poland. And so like she had come over to Boston, was at the class, and she's just somebody that every time I have interacted with Kate, just fantastic conversation. She's also she created her own company, leads a company. So she just has a really wide range and wide perspective. And also just, I got to spend some time with Kate when I spoke at, which conference did I speak at? It was in Poland. Agile by Example in Warsaw. And I just really loved reconnecting and just kind of seeing where life has taken Kate. And just, again, I think you'd have a fabulous conversation.
Thank you for sharing that. And Agile by Example is a nice example of a conference, I would say. Really wonderful people organizing that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that conference.
So that is a nice way to bring that in as well. Stephanie, it's been a wonderful time. If people want to connect with you and learn more, what's a good way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, so the best way to connect and stay connected is to subscribe to my newsletter. It's called Leaders Ride the Waves, and you can find it on my website, agilesocks.com. And so I try to make it weekly-ish. I put the ish in there because, like sometimes I might not have time to get to it, but I have an intention of weekly. And it's going to cross a wide range because like I kind of like I blend together agility, leadership, life, product, Scrum, like all of it. To me, there's lessons in everything. And also just even checking out my website. I've written a lot, have a lot of resources there, so feel free to poke around. And yeah, when you subscribe to my newsletter, please respond to them as well. Like we can be in conversation. I love to hear how people are receiving and or applying and or like what isn't clear, what questions do we have? So, I'm always happy to respond as well and have it more of a conversation. And then of course you can find me on LinkedIn.
I wanted to show, this is, I think, the website.
Yes, agilesocks.com. Yeah, and if people are interested, yep, that's LinkedIn. And if you're interested in working with me for training, I do like kind of private coaching, or I do like targeted team coaching, whether that's a product team or a leadership team. I'm happy to talk to you about that, and you can get that information on my website as well.
Wonderful. The only thing left me is to really thank you for your time. It's almost 2 hours that we had a conversation, or an hour and 40 minutes, something like that. So I really loved the energy that radiates, that came to Belgium. I really have, although it's late in the evening, I get a lot of energy from doing this conversation, just like I hope I always get. But this is a nice example. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that it is a conversation.
Yeah, I like that as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank
watching
you.
Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.